So if you're trying to figure out how to reset so that this next quarter is your best yet, this one's for you. On this Mondays with Moriniki, we want to talk about part three in this four-part recalibration series, and we're going to focus on the importance of resets. And so just to quickly, give, I guess, a quick recap, and if you haven't seen parts one and two, go back and watch them so that everything makes sense. But, quickly, we talked about in part one reflecting, and really that's just an opportunity for you to take time and just assess what's gone well, what hasn't in your current quarter. And so, whatever quarter, if you're watching this later, it still applies, so that you then have an opportunity to recalibrate. And recalibration is really just about taking stock of what changes might have occurred during that quarter, because life happens, priorities shift, and we want to make sure that now going into the next quarter, you're really focused on the things that are actually important and top of mind, and you're giving yourself the ability to assess whatever kind of maybe capacity constraints might have emerged or any obstacles you've encountered. And so with that in mind, you want to think about resets, and so that's where we want to kind of spend our time today. And really, when you're thinking about kind of resets, it's really about resetting kind of whatever systems or strategies that you have in place, and frankly, even just like your mindset or your priorities around goals. But it's just resetting those things to align with the revised game plan. And so that's why you have to start with the reflection and then the recalibration, because essentially you're setting yourself up to kind of have a revised game plan of what you're going to do and how you're going to kind of move going into Q2 or whatever the current quarter is. And so you want to take that info that data that you've accumulated, and now you want to implement it. And so resets are not about going back to square one, because I think this is one of the reasons why I see people not doing resets is not understanding that there's a difference between quitting and stopping, or finishing or moving on. Like, there is something strategic in recognizing that sometimes a certain course of action no longer serves you, and like you can see, like, this isn't going the way I wanted it to. It's not going in the direction that is going to be most impactful. But I think that there's such this fear that I'm going to be labeled a quitter, and so instead of just like stopping and pivoting and resetting, we just keep going down this path that we already know is problematic. And so I think I want to kind of invite you to relabel and rethink about, what it means to kind of strategically stop something and make that pivot. And I think that resets really provide you an opportunity to do that. And so, practically speaking, like, what does it look like to reset? And so the first thing is revisiting. And so when you revisit, you're just going to look at, now that you've done the reflection, you've done the recalibration, you have these revised goals for your next quarter. Make sure, taking fresh eyes and looking at them again, they still make sense. Is there any additional trimming? Sometimes we're being super ambitious and aggressive, and that's good to a point, but we also want to make sure that we're setting ourselves up for success going into this next quarter. And so just take one quick look and see, is there anything that I would maybe shave off of this list before moving forward? And then you want to prioritize. And so look at the list, and everything can't be equal. Everything can't have the exact same priority. And I think this is where a lot of folks get in trouble, is that we're trying to keep everything on the same level. We're trying to do everything in the same time frame. And so you really need to look at this and figure out, like, what is the priority, and that can be factoring in importance, it can be factoring in time sensitivities, but really kind of reorder your list from most important or top priority to what is maybe a little bit of a slower burn. And then when you do that, now you want to kind of assign deadlines and, completion dates to these goals, because again, this is just kind of, I think, putting your prioritization in a little bit more of a firmer form and a little bit more of a concrete state by assigning the deadlines, by assigning the completion dates. It also serves as an accountability point to get it done and to be able to see, am I on track or am I off track? And so you really want to come up with those goals. And if you have, I mean, with those deadlines, and if you have a goal that is complex, you can always break it into subparts. And so it can be like, I'm going to do part one by this date, I'm going to do part two by this date, and so on and so forth, and then go forward. And then you want to build in buffers. And I want to say this again, you want to build in buffers. This is one of the things that I think that, especially with all my high performing, achieving folks that we miss. Again, we like to say that life is lifing or that things happen. And I think one of the beautiful things about life is there's a level of unpredictability to it. And why are you not creating a schedule that gives you a little bit of wiggle room to better adapt and adjust when those things happen? And so if you have a day where you have like 14 working hours, stop creating a 14-hour, this is everything I'm going to accomplish, because you're not giving yourself any buffer, and you're frankly already setting yourself up for a little bit of disappointment and stress, because we know there's going to be a call, there's going to be a meeting, there's going to be something that comes up that it may just be your focus falters that day, but there's going to be something that comes up that throws you off course. And when you don't build in buffers, you really are just coming out the gate saying I'm going to get it done perfectly as envisioned. And that's just not life. That's just not realistic. And it doesn't mean that you're not high performing to have some buffers. And so, buffers that can be on a given day when you're scheduling maybe 12 hours. I mean, I will get into another video about that, but say 12. So you give yourself 2 hours of buffer. That doesn't mean you're not working. It just means that if something happens, it doesn't completely ruin your day. If you have something that you're scheduling, you want to get it done in 5 weeks, but maybe you give yourself a 6 week deadline just to be able to have buffer if something comes up. And so, yes, I know there's school of thought of, and I think that's a separate video of, if you give yourself 5 weeks, it's going to take you 5 weeks. We're not talking about procrastination here. We're talking about setting deadlines that factor in the whole picture of everything that you have going on, so that you are able to achieve all of these things in a strategic, methodical way, as opposed to putting everything clumped into 1 or 2 weeks and getting nothing done, because then everything blows up, everything is happening, and all of a sudden you're just like, oh, I'm 2 weeks in and I'm completely off schedule. That wasn't a realistic schedule. And so we're talking about setting deadlines and times that actually reflect your life and what's going on. And so that kind of goes into like a little bonus thing of scheduling. So to the extent that you can, you should schedule time to focus specifically on action steps and items that align with accomplishing these goals. And so if one of your goals is working out and going to the gym, you should schedule that gym time in your calendar. If you have a contract or something that you need to review, schedule a block of time to review it. We need to start treating working time as appointments, because we tend to honor those things that are in our calendar as appointments, but when we don't actually create those blocks of time, more often than not, we don't actually end up doing that. And so, really being a bit disciplined about actually adding some of these things in your schedule can be very helpful. And so, with that, when you revisit, prioritize, assign, build in, and schedule, you're now reset. And that just means that you can kind of look and say, okay, going into the next quarter, I've refreshed my goals, I've come up with the deadlines, I've seen what makes sense, I've factored in my capacity constraints and things like that. Again, this is the importance of the buffers, because it's just being honest about what's going on otherwise. I can't even talk, elsewhere in your life, and then you're scheduling stuff in so that you hopefully can really create that time in your calendar to get it done, because you said this is a priority. But don't tell me what your priorities are, show me what your priorities are. And if your calendar doesn't have time for these things, I would actually question whether or not they're a priority. And that's not shade, that's just facts. We make time for the things that we say that matter. And so with that done, you've now taken and created these action steps and put them in your calendar. And so hopefully that was helpful. I'm looking forward to connecting with you all next week for the last installment of our 4-part series. But for right now, drop a comment with done in the comments to let me know once you've completed your reset, and I'll talk to you next week.